Three small figures moved to the falling snow. A German shepherd mother and her two tiny puppies, struggling across a frozen mountain road where no animal should have been alone. The mother kept walking. The puppies could barely keep up. A few hundred yards away, a retired Navy SEAL slammed on his brakes and stepped out into the storm. At first, it looked like a simple rescue. But why would a mother dog lead her puppies through deep snow instead of seeking shelter? Why did she refuse help, even when her puppies were exhausted? And why, after being given warmth and safety, did she keep trying to leave? This is a fictional story created for storytelling purposes. Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from today? Drop your country or state in the comments below. Winter had settled deeply over the western mountains of Wyoming. Snow covered the pine forests in thick white layers, softening the sharp edges of the landscape and muting the world beneath a blanket of silence. The roads that wound through the mountains seemed forgotten by time, visited only by the occasional truck or local resident brave enough to travel through the cold. It was the kind of winter that looked beautiful from a distance and dangerous up close. Michael Turner drove slowly along one of those roads. At 67 years old, the retired Navy SEAL had learned that mountains demanded respect. He sat behind the wheel of an aging blue pickup truck, broad shoulders filling the driver's seat. Time had carved deep lines into his face, but had not diminished its strength. His jaw remained square and defined. His silver-gray hair was cut short and practical. A neatly trimmed gray beard framed a face weathered by decades of harsh sun, ocean winds, and difficult memories. His blue-gray eyes were sharp, observant eyes that missed very little, though lately they often seemed focused on things far away. People in nearby towns considered Michael polite but distant. He would help a stranger change a tire without hesitation, yet rarely stayed long enough for conversation. Retirement had not brought him peace. It had simply given him more time to sit alone with thoughts he preferred to avoid. 6 months earlier, Michael had moved to Wyoming after leaving Virginia. Officially, he told people he wanted quieter surroundings. The truth was more complicated. His son Daniel had stopped answering his calls years ago. There had been no dramatic argument, no betrayal, no single moment to blame. Just years of missed birthdays, postponed visits, deployments, obligations, and assumptions. Michael had always believed there would be time later. Later had quietly disappeared. Now his son lived somewhere in Oregon with a family Michael had never met. The silence between them had grown so large that neither seems to know how to cross it. As snowflakes drifted across the windshield, Michael adjusted his grip on the steering wheel and focused on the road ahead. That was when he saw movement. At first, it appeared to be nothing more than shifting shadows against the snow. Then the shadows moved again. Michael slowed immediately. 3 animals emerged in the white landscape. A German shepherd mother walked ahead, her body lowered against the wind. 2 small puppies struggled through the snow behind her. Michael frowned. The puppies were far too young to be out there. The mother dog was large but thin. Her sable-colored coat was thick enough for winter, yet exhaustion showed in every movement. Snow clung to her fur. Her paws dragged slightly with each step. One ear stood upright while the other tilted backward whenever the wind gusted harder. The puppies looked no older than 7 weeks. Their oversized paws disappeared into the snow with every step. One stumbled repeatedly. The other stayed close beside its sibling, occasionally nudging it forward. None of them should have been on that road. Michael pulled the truck onto the shoulder. The engine idled. For a moment he remained seated studying them. The mother dog never looked away from the road ahead, not once. Not toward the truck, not toward the man, only forward, as if reaching some destination mattered more than anything else. Michael stepped out. Cold air hit his face instantly. The puppies noticed him first. One stopped walking, the other sat down directly in the snow. The mother dog finally turned. Their eyes met. Amber eyes, tired eyes. Eyes that had spent too long expecting trouble. Michael slowly crouched. "Easy," he said softly. His voice remained calm. Years of working around military dogs had taught him patience. The German Shepherd immediately stepped backward, not aggressively, not fearfully, deliberately, creating distance. Michael stopped moving. The dog stopped too. The puppies stood between them. One puppy shivered visibly. Michael felt a knot tighten in his chest. "You've got two babies out here," he muttered. The wind answered. The mother dog glanced briefly at the puppies, then back at Michael. Her body language confused him. She clearly cared about them, yet she seemed unwilling to accept help. The contradiction bothered him. Michael took off one glove and slowly extended a hand. The German Shepherd retreated another step. No growling, no barking, no threat, just avoidance, as though being touched frightened her more than freezing. The puppy nearest him suddenly collapsed into the snow, not dramatically, just tired, too tired. Michael made a decision. He moved quickly. The mother dog jumped backward immediately. The puppy barely reacted when Michael lifted it, too exhausted to resist. The second puppy followed moments later. The German Shepherd circled nervously several yards away, watching. Always watching. Michael carried both puppies to the truck. He placed them on a blanket inside the cab and turned the heat higher. The puppies curled together almost instantly. The mother dog remained outside, standing, waiting. Michael shut the passenger door and turned toward her. "You can leave if you want," he said. She didn't move. "You don't trust me?" The dog blinked slowly. Snow gathered along her back. "But those pups won't make another night out here." For nearly a minute, neither moved. Then the German Shepherd walked toward the truck. Not toward Michael, toward the truck, toward the puppies. Michael opened the rear door. The dog hesitated. Every muscle in her body appeared ready to flee. Then she climbed inside. The entire drive back to Michael's cabin, she never relaxed, not once. The puppies slept. The mother dog remained awake, watching every movement Michael made, watching every turn of the road, watching every mile that separated them from wherever she had come from. By evening they reached the cabin. The small wooden structure sat among snow-covered pines overlooking a narrow valley. Warm light glowed from the windows. Inside, Michael prepared food and water. The puppies ate eagerly. The mother dog waited until Michael stepped away. Only then did she approach the bowl. Even then, she never took her eyes off him. Hours later, the fire crackled inside the stone fireplace. The puppies slept on a blanket nearby, their tiny bodies rising and falling with peaceful breaths. For the first time all day, they looked safe. Michael sat in an old chair and watched them. Something about the scene stirred an ache he had spent years ignoring. A family held together by uncertainty, creatures too stubborn to stop moving forward, promises left unsaid. Outside, snow continued falling. Inside, warmth filled the room. Yet one member of the little family remained apart. The mother dog sat beside the front door, motionless, silent, her eyes fixed on the darkness beyond the window. Michael watched her for several minutes. She never lay down, never closed her eyes, never relaxed. It was as though she believed the world outside might call for her at any moment. Or perhaps she feared that if she slept, everything she cared about might disappear. The fire crackled softly behind them. The puppies dreamed beside the hearth. And long after midnight, while the storm covered the mountains in white silence, the mother dog continued staring into the snow, waiting, watching, refusing to sleep. The storm lingered over the Wyoming mountains for 3 more days. Not the violent kind that made headlines, just the steady winter weather that settled over the landscape and seemed determined to stay. Snow drifted against the cabin walls. Pine branches sagged under white weight. The valley beyond Michael Turner's property disappeared behind curtains of gray and white until the world felt smaller than it really was. Inside the cabin, life began finding a rhythm. The puppies adapted first. Michael wasn't surprised. Young creatures rarely carried old fears. The stronger puppy quickly claimed ownership of everything. It chased loose bootlaces, barked at its own reflection in the glass door, and occasionally launched itself at snowflakes drifting outside the window. The weaker puppy remained quieter, but was improving every day. It followed its sibling everywhere and slept so deeply beside the fireplace that Michael sometimes checked just to make sure it was breathing. The mother dog remains different. Every morning Michael placed food and water near the kitchen. Every morning she waited until he left the room. Every evening he refreshed the bowls. Every evening she watched him walk away before touching them. She never growled, never snapped, never showed aggression. The distance she maintained felt deliberate, calculated, almost disciplined. It reminded Michael of soldiers who had survived difficult deployments, men who could sit beside friends for hours and still remain unreachable. The thought bothered him. On the fourth morning, Michael sat at the kitchen table drinking coffee while pretending not to watch the dogs. The puppies wrestled across an old blanket. The mother lay near the front door, not sleeping. Watching. Always watching. When one puppy wandered too far toward Michael, she immediately lifted her head. The movement was subtle, barely noticeable, yet the puppy instantly returned. The bonds between them fascinated him. The mother trusted neither the house nor the man inside it, but she trusted her own responsibility. Perhaps that was enough. Michael found himself speaking aloud despite knowing she wouldn't understand. "You know they're safe here?" The dog blinked, nothing more. Michael smiled slightly. "Yeah, I wouldn't believe me either." The admission surprised him. Not because it was true, because he had said it aloud. That afternoon he drove into town for supplies. The nearest community was Ashwood, a small mountain town built around a single main road. Most buildings were older than Michael, snow piled against storefronts, pickup trucks filled parking lots, smoke drifted from chimneys. The kind of town where people noticed newcomers even when they pretended not to. Michael stopped at a general store owned by a woman named Ruth Carter. Ruth was 62, broad-shouldered and practical, with short silver hair and weathered skin that spoke of decades spent working outdoors. Her sharp green eyes missed almost nothing. Years earlier, she had lost her husband in a logging accident. The grief had not made her bitter. It had simply stripped away any interest in pretending. "You look tired," she said, while ringing up his groceries. "Thanks. Wasn't a compliment." Michael laughed. The sound felt unfamiliar. Ruth nodded toward the bags of dog food. "3 dogs now?" "Temporary. That's what everybody says." Michael carried the supplies outside and stood beside his truck for a moment. The cold air felt clean, simple, unlike his thoughts. On the drive home, he found himself thinking about his former wife, not because he missed her, not in that way. Karen Turner had been a patient woman once, tall and slender, with dark brown hair and intelligent eyes that always seemed to see beneath whatever explanation he offered. She had spent years trying to build bridges Michael never noticed needed building. The marriage had not ended because of betrayal. It had ended because silence can become its own kind of abandonment. Michael remembered one particular argument from years ago. Karen had stood in their kitchen holding a coffee mug. "You always wait for other people to come to you." He had dismissed the comment then. Now, driving through falling snow, he wondered if she had been right. Daniel had stopped calling. Michael stopped calling as often. Months became years. Neither crossed the distance. The road home curved through pine forest. By the time he reached the cabin, daylight was fading. The puppies greeted him immediately. The stronger one nearly tumbled down the porch steps trying to reach him. The weaker puppy barked excitedly from behind. The mother dog remained in the doorway, watching, not approaching, not retreating, waiting. Always waiting. That night, Michael sat beside the fireplace, reading. The puppies slept against each other. The mother dog occupied her usual position near the front entrance. Hours passed. The fire burned lower. Wind pushed softly against the windows. Michael eventually closed his book. His eyes drifted toward the dog. For the first time, she wasn't watching outside. She was watching him. The moment lasted only seconds, then she looked away. Yet somehow that brief glance felt important. Not trust, not acceptance. Recognition, perhaps. As if she had finally decided he existed. Nothing more, nothing less. Michael went to bed shortly after. The cabin settled into silence. Outside, snow continued falling. Inside, warmth held the darkness at bay. Sometime after midnight, a sound woke him. Not loud, not alarming, just wrong. Years of military service had trained him to recognize the difference. Michael opened his eyes immediately. The bedroom was dark. For several seconds he listened. Nothing. Then he heard it again, a soft creak, wood moving. A door. He pulled on a sweater and stepped into the hallway. The fireplace still glowed faintly. The puppies remained asleep beside it. One stretched lazily without waking. The room appeared normal, until Michael noticed the back door. Open. Only slightly, but open. Cold air drifted inside. Snowflakes spun across the floorboards. Michael's stomach tightened. He crossed the room quickly. The puppies continued sleeping. Then he looked toward the front door, the spot where the mother dog always sat. Empty. Michael stopped moving. For a long moment, he simply stared. The realization settled heavily inside him. The mother dog was gone. Outside, beyond the doorway, fresh snow covered the mountains, and somewhere in that darkness, she had disappeared without making a sound. Morning arrived beneath a pale, gray sky that seemed carved from ice. The snowstorm had finally weakened during the night, leaving the mountains buried beneath fresh layers of white. The world outside Michael Turner's cabin appeared untouched, silent enough that even small sounds carried farther than they should. Michael stood in the open back doorway, staring at the snow-covered ground. The tracks were easy to find. Fresh paw prints, one dog, heading north. For a brief moment he considered staying. The puppies were still sleeping near the fireplace, warm and safe. Common sense told him the mother dog would probably return. Yet something about the tracks unsettled him. Not because she had left, because she had left alone. Michael pulled on his winter coat, filled a thermos with coffee, and left extra food near the puppies before stepping outside. The trail wound through pines and over shallow ridges. Sometimes the wind partially covered the tracks, forcing him to slow down and search carefully. The farther he walked, the more he realized the mother dog wasn't wandering. She knew exactly where she was going. The realization reminded him of something. People often assumed lost things moved randomly. Most didn't. People returned to old habits, old neighborhoods, old mistakes, old memories. Perhaps dogs did too. Nearly 2 hours later, the forest began thinning. A wide valley opened before him. And there, half hidden beneath snow and years of neglect, stood an old ranch property. Michael stopped. The place was abandoned. Not recently, not dramatically, simply forgotten. The barn leaned slightly to one side. Fence posts sagged beneath snowdrifts. The farmhouse windows were boarded. No smoke, no vehicles, no signs of life. Yet the mother dog sat quietly outside the front fence, waiting. She wasn't trying to enter, wasn't scratching at the gate, wasn't searching for food. She simply sat there, looking. Michael remained several yards away. The dog noticed him immediately. Their eyes met, amber eyes, blue-gray eyes. Neither moved. Eventually, the mother turned her attention back toward the empty property. Michael followed her gaze. "What are you looking for?" The question lingered unanswered. For nearly 20 minutes, she remained there, motionless. The wind shifted. Snow drifted through the fence rails. Nothing happened. No dramatic discovery, no hidden secret, only silence. Then, without warning, the dog stood up. She looked at the property one final time, turned around, and began walking away. Michael felt a strange sadness he couldn't explain. The place clearly mattered to her, yet she had no intention of staying. He followed at a distance, not leading, not chasing, just observing. Halfway back toward town, he stopped at a small roadside diner called Willow Junction. The mother dog remained outside beneath a pine tree while Michael stepped inside. The diner smelled of coffee, cinnamon, and old wood. Several locals occupied scattered booths. Most looked old enough to remember when the town had been larger. The first person to recognize the dog was a waitress named Helen Brooks. Helen was 70 years old, short and slightly heavy-set, with soft features and silver blonde hair pinned loosely behind her head. Her blue eyes carried the patient kindness of someone who had spent decades listening to other people's troubles. She glanced through the window. "Well, I'll be—" Michael looked up. "You know that dog?" "Maybe." Helen set down a coffee mug. "Hard to tell these days. She looks older now." Michael listened carefully. Helen pointed toward the road. "Years ago, there was a family out near Miller Ranch." She nodded toward the abandoned property. "They had a German shepherd that looked a lot like her." "What happened?" Helen shrugged. "They moved." "And took the dog?" "I think so." The uncertainty caught Michael's attention. "You think?" Helen sighed. "Out here, people leave. Sometimes animals get left behind. Sometimes they don't. Hard to know after enough years pass." Later that afternoon, Michael continued asking questions. The answers only became stranger. An elderly mechanic claimed the dog once belonged to a truck driver. A retired teacher believed she had seen the same dog living near another ranch years earlier. A gas station owner insisted she had belonged to a family with children. Every story sounded different. Every story contained uncertainty. Yet one pattern kept repeating. The dog never seemed to stay anywhere very long. As daylight faded, Michael visited one final person. Walter Pierce operated the local feed store. At 74, Walter stood nearly 6 feet tall, despite age bending his shoulders slightly forward. Thick, white eyebrows shadowed dark eyes that missed very little. His weathered face looked carved from old oak. Walter listened quietly, then nodded. "I know exactly which dog you're talking about." Michael leaned forward. "You do?" "Seen her off and on for years." "What happened to her?" Walter scratched his beard thoughtfully. "Nothing happened." Michael frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means people assume every sad story starts with cruelty." Walter looked out the window. "Sometimes it starts with change." He folded his arms. "Family loses a house, dog goes somewhere else. Owner gets sick, dog goes somewhere else. People move. People die. People divorce. People promise they'll come back." Walter shook his head. "Life keeps moving." Michael felt something tighten in his chest, because Walter wasn't talking only about dogs. The old man noticed. Most old men noticed more than they admitted. "That dog didn't belong nowhere," Walter said quietly. "She belonged to too many places." The sentence stayed with Michael all evening. As he drove back toward the cabin, the mother dog rode silently in the truck bed beneath a blanket Michael had secured against the wind. Not because she trusted him, because she chose not to leave. There was a difference. The mountains darkened beneath the coming night. Snow reflected pale moonlight. The road stretched ahead. Michael thought about the abandoned ranch, the different stories, the endless transfers, the uncertainty. For years he had assumed the dog feared people. The evidence suggested otherwise. The mother dog had lived around people most of her life, worked beside them, followed them, waited for them, lost them, again and again and again. By the time they reached the cabin, the realization felt unavoidable. The puppies greeted their mother immediately. Both rushed toward her, both pressed against her legs. The mother lowered her head and touched each puppy gently with her nose. A small gesture, yet deeply familiar. Michael stood in the doorway, watching. For the first time, he understood what he had been seeing all along. The dog did not fear human beings. She feared attachment. Because attachment meant loss. And loss eventually meant being left behind. The mother settled near the fireplace beside her puppies. Michael quietly sat across the room. Neither approached the other. Neither needed to. Outside, snow continued falling softly across the Wyoming mountains. Inside the cabin, an uncomfortable truth settled between them. Sometimes the hardest thing wasn't surviving abandonment. Sometimes it was risking trust after surviving it. Winter settled into a quieter rhythm across the Wyoming mountains. The violent storms had passed for now, leaving behind cold blue mornings and long silver afternoons where sunlight reflected off endless snow. The world looked peaceful from a distance. Michael Turner had lived long enough to know peace and silence were not always the same thing. Inside the cabin, the puppies continued growing stronger. The larger puppy had become fearless in the reckless way only young animals could be. It treated every object as a potential toy, and every room as territory worth exploring. The smaller puppy remained gentler, preferring warmth and companionship to adventure. Yet even it had begun gaining weight, its ribs no longer visible beneath soft German Shepherd fur. Their mother watched them constantly. Not possessively, not anxiously, simply attentively. As if she had spent so many years preparing for loss that she could not fully relax even during safety. Michael noticed something else. The puppies never seemed worried about being abandoned. Why would they? They had no memory of being left behind, no memory of doors closing, no memory of trucks driving away, no memory of learning that people could disappear. That burden belonged entirely to their mother. 3 days after visiting the abandoned ranch, Michael returned to town. The stories he had gathered still lingered in his thoughts, pieces of a life, fragments of ownership, names nobody remembered clearly. He found himself wanting answers, not because answers would solve anything, because human beings always believed understanding would somehow hurt less than uncertainty. The first person he visited was an elderly woman named Margaret Evans. Margaret was 78 years old, thin as a fence rail, with neatly combed white hair and pale skin that seemed almost translucent beneath winter light. Arthritis had twisted her fingers, but not her mind. Her memory remained sharp enough to embarrass younger people. She lived alone in a modest farmhouse outside Ashwood. When Michael showed her a photograph of the mother dog, something softened in her expression. "I know her." Michael sat forward. "You do?" Margaret nodded slowly. "Not by name." Her gaze drifted toward the window. "Years ago, she belonged to the Larson family." "What happened?" The old woman sighed. "The father passed away." Snow moved against the glass. "The children moved away." "The mother couldn't keep the property." Michael waited. Margaret smiled sadly. "The dog sat on the porch every afternoon for nearly 2 months. The image stayed with him. Did they come back?" "No." The answer was simple, final. Later that day, Michael spoke with another local resident. Jacob Reed owned a small equipment repair shop near the highway. At 53, Jacob was broad-chested and powerful, despite a permanent limp caused by a logging accident decades earlier. Thick black hair streaked with gray framed a face permanently weathered by sun and hard labor. People trusted him because he never exaggerated. When shown the photo, Jacob nodded immediately. "She spent one summer at my brother's ranch." Michael listened. "Good dog." "What happened?" "My brother got divorced," Jacob shrugged. "The property was sold." Michael almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because the pattern had become painfully obvious. Nobody intended to abandon the dog. Life simply kept rearranging itself around her. The dog became part of the furniture people forgot to pack. That evening, Michael drove home beneath a darkening sky. The mountains seemed endless, the kind of landscape that reminded people how small individual lives really were. He found himself thinking about Daniel, not the child, the man, the stranger. Years ago, Michael had always assumed they would eventually reconnect. There would be a phone call, a visit, a holiday gathering, something. Life would naturally correct itself. Now he wasn't sure. Relationships didn't heal automatically. Time wasn't a mechanic. It didn't repair what people neglected. As if summoned by the thought itself, his phone vibrated. Michael glanced at the screen while stopped at a red light in town. A message from Daniel. For several seconds he simply stared. The contact name felt almost unreal. His thumb hesitated before opening it. The message contained only 6 words. "Hope Wyoming isn't freezing you alive." That was all. No greeting, no affection, no invitation, no anger. Yet somehow it felt larger than any conversation they had shared in years. Michael read it twice, then a third time. A smile almost appeared. Not because the message fixed anything, because it existed. The road between two people remained broken, but perhaps it wasn't gone. He typed several responses, deleted all of them. Finally he wrote, "Still alive. Hope you're doing well." Nothing more, nothing less. When he reached the cabin, dusk had already settled over the valley. Warm light glowed from the windows. The puppies met him immediately. The larger one nearly collided with his boots. The smaller one followed close behind. Their mother remained near the fireplace, watching, as always. Yet something had changed. Not dramatically, not enough for anyone else to notice. Michael noticed. People who spent years reading human behavior learned to recognize small differences. The mother dog no longer positioned herself directly beside an exit. She still preferred open space, still avoided physical contact, still monitored every movement. But the constant readiness had softened slightly. The edge remained. The panic didn't. Michael prepared dinner. The puppies ate enthusiastically. Their mother waited until they finished before approaching her own bowl. Afterward, the puppies fell asleep near the fireplace. The larger puppy sprawled awkwardly across the blanket. The smaller one rested against its sibling's side. Michael settled into a chair nearby. Outside, darkness covered the mountains. Inside, only the fire moved. For a long time, nobody made a sound. Then something unexpected happened. The mother dog stood. Michael remained still. She walked across the room, not toward the door, not toward the puppies, toward the fireplace, toward him. Every instinct told him not to move. So he didn't. The dog stopped several feet away, close enough for him to see individual strands of fur around her amber eyes, close enough to notice the silver beginning to appear around her muzzle. Not young, not old. A survivor's age. She lowered herself slowly onto the floor, not beside him, not touching him, but only a few feet away. The distance mattered. Michael understood that immediately. Trust wasn't arriving. It was approaching carefully, testing the ground. The fire crackled softly. The dog rested her head on her paws. For the first time since entering his life, she chose proximity over distance. Michael looked into the flames, and for reasons he couldn't fully explain, he thought about every person the dog had lost, then every person he had lost. The room remained silent. Yet something important had been said anyway. The second storm arrived without warning. One afternoon, the sky above the Wyoming mountains turned the color of old steel. By evening, the wind had begun its long, mournful song through the pines. By nightfall, snow was falling so heavily that the cabin seemed cut off from the rest of the world. Michael Turner stood at the living room window watching white chaos swallow the valley. The weather report had predicted snowfall. It had not predicted this. The mountains disappeared first, then the trees. Then even the fence posts outside vanished beneath the storm. Inside the cabin, the fire burned steadily. The puppies slept near the hearth. Their mother lay in her usual place a few feet away, watching them. For several weeks, life had remained stable. The puppies were growing. The mother had slowly begun accepting the cabin as a temporary refuge. Nothing felt dramatic, nothing felt fragile. Perhaps that was why Michael failed to notice the first signs. The smaller puppy barely touched its dinner. At first he assumed it was tired. The puppy had spent most of the afternoon chasing its sibling through the cabin. Young animals exhausted themselves easily. The next morning, however, something felt wrong. The puppy remained curled tightly into a ball. Its breathing sounded shallow. Its nose felt warmer than usual. Michael frowned. The mother dog noticed before he did. She had been watching all night. Every time the puppy shifted, her ears moved. Every time it coughed softly, her head lifted. Now she stood beside it, not touching, watching, waiting. Michael knelt beside the blanket. The puppy barely opened its eyes. A knot formed immediately in his chest. Years of experience around military working dogs told him this wasn't simple exhaustion. By noon, the puppy's condition worsened. Its breathing became labored. Its small chest rose too quickly. Its body felt hot beneath Michael's hands. Outside, the storm intensified. The nearest veterinary clinic sat nearly 40 miles away. Road conditions were becoming dangerous. Michael called anyway. Dr. Eleanor Reeves answered after the second ring. Her calm voice immediately lowered his panic. Eleanor was 47 years old, compact and practical, with shoulder-length dark brown hair threaded with silver near the temples. Her narrow face carried the exhaustion common among people who spent their lives caring for creatures unable to explain their suffering. Her gray-green eyes remained steady, even during emergencies. Michael described the symptoms. Eleanor listened carefully. "Keep the puppy warm." "I am." "Hydration?" "Trying." A pause. "If the breathing gets worse, call me immediately." "You think it's serious?" Another pause. The kind professionals use when they don't want to lie. "It could become serious." The storm continued. By evening, the puppy could barely stand. Its sibling no longer tried initiating play. Animals understood illness better than people sometimes. The stronger puppy simply curled nearby, waiting. Michael moved the sick puppy into the spare bedroom, where the temperature remained easier to control. He carried blankets inside, set up a portable heater, prepared warm water. The mother followed, but stopped at the doorway. Michael noticed immediately. The room contained her puppy, yet she would not enter. She lay down directly outside the door, watching, always watching. Hours passed. The puppy's fever remained high. Michael slept little. Every time he closed his eyes, another cough woke him. The cabin became strangely quiet. Even the storm seemed distant compared to the sound of that fragile breathing. Near midnight, Michael walked into the kitchen and stared at his phone. Daniel's number remained saved. It had remained saved for years, despite everything, despite silence, despite distance, despite pride. The screen glowed in the darkness. Michael thought about the mother dog lying outside the bedroom. She couldn't cure her puppy, couldn't lower the fever, couldn't stop the illness, yet she refused to leave. People like to believe love was measured through solutions. Maybe it was measured through presence. Before he could change his mind, Michael pressed call. The ringing sounded impossibly loud. Once, twice, 3 times. Then a voice answered. "Hello?" Michael closed his eyes briefly. Daniel sounded older. Of course he sounded older. Years had passed. Still, hearing it felt strange. "Hey." Silence. Not hostile, just uncertain. "Hey, Dad." More silence followed, the kind shared by people trying to remember how conversations worked. Snow struck the cabin windows. The heater hummed. Neither knew where to begin. Finally, Daniel spoke. "Everything okay?" Michael almost laughed. No small talk, straight to concern. Something survives distance. Yeah. A pause. Actually, not really. Daniel waited. Michael looked toward the bedroom. My dog is sick. Not my puppy, not the rescued puppy. My dog. The realization surprised him. Daniel's voice softened. Bad? I don't know. The answer sounded more honest than Michael intended. Several seconds passed. Then Daniel said quietly, That's the worst part. Michael leaned against the counter. For the next few minutes they talked, not deeply, not dramatically. Weather, work, the storm, the sick puppy. Nothing life-changing. Yet neither rushed to end the conversation. The distance between them remained. But nobody stepped away from it. Eventually, Daniel cleared his throat. Let me know how the puppy does. I will. Okay. Another silence. Then, good night, Dad. Michael stared at the phone after the call ended. Good night, Dad. 2 simple words, yet somehow they felt larger than entire years. Back in the bedroom, the puppy's breathing had become weaker. Michael sat beside the blanket. Hours blended together, night stretched endlessly. The mother remained outside the doorway, never entering, never leaving. The stronger puppy slept beside her, occasionally lifting its head whenever its sibling coughed. Morning came slowly. The storm still raged. The fever remained. Then another day passed, and another. Michael lost track of sleep entirely. Coffee replaced rest. Worry replaced routine. The mother dog never abandoned her position. Not once. She refused food unless Michael brought it to the doorway. She drank water there, slept there, waited there. The threshold became her entire world, as though crossing into the room required a courage she did not possess. On the 3rd night, the fever finally began breaking. Gradually, almost invisibly. The puppy's breathing slowed. Its body cooled. Its eyes opened longer. When it managed to stand without collapsing, Michael felt exhaustion wash over him so heavily he nearly laughed. The danger wasn't fully gone, but the worst had passed. The mother dog sensed it immediately. Animals often did. She rose slowly from her place beside the doorway. For several seconds she stood there, watching. Michael remained still. The puppy lifted its head. The room stayed silent, except for the distant wind. Then something happened that Michael would remember for years. The mother dog stepped forward. 1 step, then another, crossing the doorway, crossing whatever invisible boundary had held her back. For the first time since arriving at the cabin, she entered the room. The puppy immediately pressed weakly against her. The mother lowered her head and touched its face gently with her nose. No drama, no grand gesture, just a mother confirming her child remained alive. Michael sat quietly in his chair. Outside, the second storm continued across the mountains. Inside, something else had finally changed. Not trust, not yet. But for the first time, fear had lost a small battle. The storm finally moved east. Not suddenly, not dramatically. It simply loosened its grip on the mountains, one day at a time. The roads reappeared first, then the fence posts. Then patches of dark pine trunks emerged from the endless white landscape like survivors returning from a long disappearance. For the first time in weeks, sunlight touched the valley outside Michael Turner's cabin. Inside, life slowly settled into something that almost resembled normal. The smaller puppy recovered faster than Michael expected. Its appetite returned, its curiosity returned. Most importantly, its energy returned. Soon, both puppies were racing through the cabin again, sliding across hardwood floors and creating enough noise to make the place feel less lonely than it had in years. Michael found himself smiling more often. Not because life had become easier, because it had become fuller. The puppies had a remarkable talent for living entirely in the present. Yesterday's illness no longer mattered. Tomorrow's uncertainty did not exist. Only the current moment deserved attention. Human beings rarely possessed that gift. The mother dog remained different. She stayed closer now, noticeably closer. When Michael worked outside splitting firewood, she often rested beneath the porch steps where she could watch both the puppies and the cabin. When he repaired a section of fence damaged during the storm, she lay nearby in the snow. Not beside him, never beside him, just close enough to observe. Yet whenever Michael accidentally shortened the distance, she still moved away. Not quickly, not fearfully, simply maintaining boundaries. One afternoon, Michael carried an armload of firewood toward the cabin. The mother dog lay near the porch. As he approached, she stood, took 3 quiet steps backward, stopped, waited. Michael paused. The realization struck him immediately. She wasn't fleeing. She was negotiating, creating space, choosing control. The difference mattered. For years, Michael had misunderstood similar behavior in people, especially those closest to him. He remembered trying to teach Daniel how to drive when his son was 16. Daniel had wanted independence. Michael had interpreted it as rejection. Karen had wanted conversations. Michael had interpreted them as criticism. Looking back now, he wondered how many relationships had suffered because he assumed distance always meant withdrawal. Perhaps sometimes distance was simply part of trust. That evening his phone buzzed again, a message from Daniel. This time there was a photograph attached. A little girl standing beside a snowman, 7 years old perhaps, dark hair, bright eyes, missing front tooth. The resemblance to Daniel was immediate. Michael stared at the image. His granddaughter. The child he had never met. The caption contained only 4 words. "Emma built this yesterday." Michael sat quietly for several minutes. No explanation accompanied the photo, no emotional speech, no invitation. Yet the message felt important. A door opening 1 inch, not enough to walk through. Enough to see light, he typed carefully. She looks proud of it. Several minutes passed, then Daniel replied. She was. That was the entire conversation. Yet Michael felt strangely exhausted afterward. Human beings liked dramatic moments. Real healing rarely looked dramatic. Most healing happened exactly like this. Tiny steps, uncomfortable silences, progress almost too small to notice. Outside, the puppies continued growing stronger. Inside, the mother dog continued confusing him. A week after the storm, Michael noticed another change. The puppies had become completely attached to him. They followed him everywhere. Kitchen, workshop, porch, truck. If Michael stood up, they stood up. If he walked outside, they followed. If he sat down, both immediately collapsed nearby. The larger puppy often slept directly beside his boots. The smaller one preferred curling against the leg of his chair. Their loyalty arrived effortlessly, without caution, without suspicion. The mother dog seemed unable to understand it. More than once, Michael caught her watching them, not with jealousy, not with anger, with confusion, as though trying to solve a puzzle. One afternoon, the puppies chased each other across the yard while Michael stacked firewood. The larger puppy suddenly abandoned the game and ran toward him. The smaller one followed immediately. Both collapsed beside his feet, tails wagging, completely content. The mother dog sat 20 yards away, watching. Her amber eyes moved between Michael and her puppies. For a long moment she remained perfectly still. Then she lowered her head slightly. Not in submission, not in defeat, in thought. Michael understood the feeling. Part of her wanted to protect them from disappointment. Another part was beginning to wonder if disappointment was inevitable. Human beings experienced the same conflict. After enough heartbreak, safety became easier than hope. The trouble was that safety often looked remarkably similar to loneliness. Several days later, Michael visited Eleanor Reeves at the veterinary clinic for a follow-up examination. The puppies were thriving. Eleanor smiled while checking them. "Healthy." "That's good." She glanced toward the mother dog waiting outside. still unwilling to enter unfamiliar buildings. "She's changing." Michael followed her gaze. "Slowly." Eleanor nodded. "Slow is usually real." The word stayed with him during the drive home. Slow is usually real. Perhaps that applied to people, too. The mountains entered early spring's strange transition period. The snow remained deep, but sunlight lingered longer each evening. Tiny streams appeared beneath ice. Birds returned. The world seemed caught between seasons, neither winter nor spring, something in between. That night, Michael sat alone on the porch after sunset. The puppies slept inside. The mother dog rested nearby, not close, not far, somewhere between. The distance felt familiar now, comfortable even. For the first time, Michael stopped wondering when she would trust him completely. Maybe trust wasn't a finish line. Maybe it was simply a direction. Hours later, he went inside. The cabin settled into silence. Wind moved softly through the trees. The fire burned low. Michael eventually fell asleep. When morning arrived, sunlight filtered through the bedroom window. For several seconds, he remained still, enjoying the unusual quiet. Then he noticed something. No scratching at the door, no movement outside, no sound from the porch. Michael dressed quickly and stepped into the living room. The puppies slept near the fireplace. He opened the front door. Cold morning air greeted him, and there she was. The mother dog lay curled on the porch, not standing guard, not sitting watch. Sleeping. Actually sleeping. Her body relaxed, her breathing slow and steady. The overnight snow remained untouched around her. For the first time since Michael had found her on that mountain road, she had chosen shelter over vigilance, chosen rest over readiness, chosen the porch instead of the snow. Michael stood quietly in the doorway. He did not approach, did not speak. Some victories deserved silence. The mother dog continued sleeping beneath the morning sun, and for the first time she looked like a creature who believed she might still be there when she woke up. Winter did not end all at once. It loosened its grip reluctantly, like an old man unwilling to leave a conversation. The snow around Michael Turner's cabin remained deep in shaded places, but patches of earth had begun appearing beneath the pines. Water dripped steadily from roof edges during the afternoons. The mountains still looked white from a distance, yet something softer had entered the air. For the first time in months, the mother dog spent entire afternoons lying in the sun. The puppies had nearly doubled in size. Their oversized paws hinted at the large German shepherds they would someday become. They followed Michael everywhere. The larger puppy had developed a fearless personality. It charged into every situation first and worried afterward. The smaller puppy remained more thoughtful, often stopping to observe before acting. The mother watched both constantly, not because she feared danger anymore, because motherhood had become habit. Some responsibilities stayed long after necessity disappeared. One Saturday morning, Michael drove into town for supplies. The puppies came along. The mother dog climbed into the truck voluntarily. That alone would have seemed impossible a few months earlier. At Bell's General Store, several townspeople greeted the dogs by name. Not official names, nicknames. The kind communities invent when they become invested in someone's story. The puppies loved the attention. The mother tolerated it. Inside the store, Michael ran into Eleanor Reeves. The veterinarian carried a box of medical supplies beneath one arm. "You're becoming predictable," she said. Michael smiled. "I'll try to be more mysterious." "You won't?" "Probably not." Eleanor glanced toward the parking lot window. The mother dog sat inside the truck watching everything, still alert, still cautious, but no longer searching for escape routes every few seconds. "She's different now." Michael followed her gaze. "Yeah." "Not healed?" "No. Just different." The distinction mattered. Healing suggested a finish line. Life rarely worked that way. Outside, another customer approached the truck. A woman in her early 40s, tall and slender with dark blonde hair tucked beneath a knitted hat. 2 children followed behind her. A boy around 10, a girl perhaps 8. The children immediately stopped beside the truck window. The puppies rushed forward, tails wagging wildly. Within seconds, all 4 appeared fascinated by each other. Michael watched from inside the store. Something about the scene felt unexpectedly warm. The woman eventually introduced herself. Her name was Laura Bennett. She lived on a small ranch outside town with her husband and children. Over the following weeks, Michael saw them several times. The children always visited the dogs. The dogs always remembered them. Friendships formed easily between creatures who hadn't yet learned to complicate affection. One afternoon, Laura asked a question Michael hadn't expected. "Have you thought about permanent homes for them?" Michael looked toward the yard where the puppies chased each other. The question lingered, because he had thought about it. Many times. The puppies deserved stability. The mother deserved security. Sooner or later, someone would ask. Laura and her husband seemed like good people, the kind who repaired fences before neighbors asked, the kind who remembered birthdays, the kind who stayed. Michael knew enough about people to recognize that. A week later, Laura returned with her husband, Ben. Ben Bennett was 45 years old, broad-shouldered and weathered from ranch work. His thick brown beard carried strands of gray near the chin, and years of outdoor labor had etched permanent lines around his eyes. He spoke little, listened carefully, and moved with the steady patience of someone accustomed to animals, weather, and disappointment. The children came too, Emma and Caleb, both carrying dog treats, both excited. The family spent nearly 2 hours at the cabin. Nothing felt forced. The puppies adored them. Even the mother remained surprisingly calm. That night, Michael sat alone on the porch. The possibility felt real now. A better future, a stable home, children, space to run, a family. Exactly what he had hoped for when he first rescued them. So why did the thought leave an ache in his chest? Perhaps because letting go and losing looked similar from a distance. Daniel texted 3 days later, a longer message than usual. Michael read it twice, then a third time. "Emma's birthday next month. We're having a small gathering. If you'd like to come, you're invited." Michael stared at the screen. The invitation wasn't emotional, wasn't dramatic, yet his hands shook slightly. For years, he had imagined this moment. Countless versions, arguments, apologies, explanations. Instead, it arrived quietly, a simple invitation, like someone opening a gate and stepping aside. The timing felt strange. Both the dogs and his son seemed to be asking the same question. What happens next? The Bennett family arrived the following Saturday. The sky was clear, snow sparkled beneath bright sunlight. The truck pulled into the driveway. The children jumped out first, laughing, running toward the puppies. Everything seemed perfect. Michael already knew what he would say. If the dogs chose to go, he wouldn't stop them. That was the promise he had made himself. Love wasn't ownership. The puppies greeted the family enthusiastically, exactly as expected. The mother watched from near the porch, as expected. Laura knelt nearby, speaking softly. Not pushing, not reaching, giving space. Everything seemed to unfold naturally until it was time. Then opened the rear truck door, prepared blankets, prepared water, prepared a place for all 3 dogs. The puppies climbed inside almost immediately, excited by the adventure, excited by movement, excited by everything. The mother remained standing in the yard, watching. Nobody rushed her. Minutes passed. She didn't move. The children waited patiently. Laura waited. Ben waited. Michael waited. The mountains stood silent around them. The mother looked at the truck, then at her puppies, then toward the road, then toward the cabin, back and forth, again and again. The hesitation seemed to stretch endlessly. Michael understood something then. This wasn't fear. It wasn't confusion. It was choice. Perhaps for the first time in years, all her life people had chosen for her. Different owners, different homes, different decisions, different departures. Now nobody was forcing anything. The silence deepened. The mother walked forward, stopped, looked into the truck. One puppy barked happily, the other wagged its tail. The family remained still. She turned away, walked back toward the porch, stopped again, looked behind her, then slowly sat down in the snow. Decision made. Nobody spoke immediately. The moment felt too important. Finally, Laura smiled sadly. "I think she answered." Michael nodded. "Yeah." Ben closed the truck door again. No frustration, no disappointment, just acceptance. The children climbed back inside. The family said their goodbyes. The puppies remained. The mother remained. The truck eventually disappeared down the mountain road. Silence returned. Michael stood on the porch. The mother sat in the yard. Neither moved, neither approached, neither retreated. The distance between them remained. Yet it felt different now, smaller somehow. The mother had stayed. Not because she was trapped, not because she was afraid, not because someone held her. For the first time in her life, she had been allowed to choose, and she had chosen to remain. The afternoon sunlight settled across the snow. Michael looked toward the empty road where the Bennett family had disappeared, then toward the mother dog. She met his eyes briefly, not long, just long enough. Then she looked away and settled comfortably beside the porch. No one forced her, no one kept her. She simply stayed. Spring arrived quietly in the Wyoming mountains. No announcement, no dramatic transformation. One morning the snow simply seemed less certain of itself. The white drifts that had ruled the landscape for months retreated into the shadows beneath pine trees and north-facing hillsides. Streams reappeared beside roads. Birds returned. The air still carried winter's memory, but no longer its authority. Michael Turner stood on the cabin porch with a cup of coffee and watched the valley wake from a long sleep. The mountains looked different now, softer, less hostile. Perhaps he did too. The two puppies were no longer really puppies, not entirely. Their legs had grown longer, their shoulders broader. The larger one remained fearless, charging through puddles, chasing birds it could never catch, and investigating every unfamiliar sound. The smaller one had developed patience instead of caution. It liked sitting beside Michael while he worked, watching the world with quiet curiosity. Both had become beautiful young German shepherds, strong, healthy, confident, the kind of dogs people imagined when they thought of loyalty. Their mother remained different, always different. That never changed. But other things had. Michael noticed them gradually. She no longer sat guard at the cabin door every night. She no longer woke at every sound. She no longer paced the perimeter before dawn. Most importantly, she never returned to the abandoned ranch. Weeks had passed, then months. The old places had stopped calling, not because they disappeared, because she finally stopped listening. One afternoon, Michael drove into Ashwood to collect supplies. The mother dog remained sleeping beneath the porch. When he returned 3 hours later, she was still there. That simple fact stayed with him. Once she would have vanished. Once every absence had been permanent until proven otherwise. Now she seemed capable of waiting. Trust, Michael realized, was not built when someone stayed. It was built when someone returned. His own life had begun changing too. The invitation from Daniel remained pinned to the refrigerator with a magnet. Emma's birthday, 3 weeks away. For days, Michael found reasons not to think about it. Then, one evening, he finally called. Daniel answered immediately, no hesitation, no surprise, as if he had been expecting the call. "We'll be happy to have you here," Daniel said. The sentence felt simple, yet Michael carried it around for the rest of the week. We. Not I, not Emma. We. A small word, a large gift. The birthday arrived beneath clear skies. Michael woke before sunrise. The cabin remained quiet. The young dogs still slept. The mother dog rested near the doorway, not guarding it, simply occupying it. Michael packed slowly. A wrapped birthday gift sat on the passenger seat of the truck. Nothing extravagant. A sketchbook, colored pencils, a beginner's watercolor set. Eleanor had helped him choose them after learning Emma liked drawing animals. Before leaving, Michael stood in the open doorway. The dogs watched him. The younger shepherds immediately rose, expecting adventure, expecting a truck ride. Michael smiled. Not today. The two dogs settled reluctantly. The mother remained where she was, watching. He looked at her for a long moment, then did something he never would have done months earlier. He left the cabin door open, wide open. No fence, no barrier, no leash, no command. If she wanted to leave, she could. If she wanted to disappear into the mountains, nothing would stop her. Michael understood something now. Love that depended on confinement was only another form of fear. He climbed into the truck, started the engine, drove away. The cabin disappeared behind the trees. The city sat nearly 3 hours away, long enough for doubt to find him several times. What if the visit became awkward? What if Emma didn't like him? What if years of distance could not be bridged? The questions followed him all morning. Then he arrived. The answers proved smaller than the fears. Emma greeted him at the door, a little older than the photograph, dark-haired, bright-eyed, missing less confidence than teeth now. She studied him for several seconds, then asked the most important question imaginable. "Are you really the guy with the dogs?" Michael laughed. The tension vanished instantly. Children often accomplished in seconds what adults complicated for years. The birthday passed quietly. Cake, presents, conversations, a backyard full of children. Daniel remained cautious. Michael remained cautious. Neither tried forcing anything. That seemed to help. Late in the afternoon, Emma showed him drawings she had made. Most featured dogs. Several featured mountains. One surprisingly accurate sketch showed 3 German shepherds standing beside a cabin. Michael stared at it longer than necessary. "Mom said they're your family now." The words landed softly, not painfully, not heavily, just honestly. For the first time in years, Michael felt no need to correct anyone. The drive home began beneath golden evening light. The mountains glowed orange along distant ridges. Michael drove with the windows cracked slightly. Cool air filled the truck. His thoughts remained unusually quiet, not because everything had been solved, because not everything needed solving immediately. The road curved upward toward the cabin. Pine trees thickened. Familiar landmarks appeared. The final bend came into view. Michael slowed instinctively. The cabin stood where it always had. Warm, ordinary, home. 2 young German shepherds exploded from the yard the moment they heard the truck. They raced down the driveway, tails wagging wildly, paws kicking dirt and gravel into the air. Michael laughed before the truck even stopped. The younger dogs circled the vehicle immediately, demanding attention, demanding confirmation, demanding existence. He stepped out. Both dogs nearly knocked him backward. For several moments there was only movement and noise and enthusiasm. Then Michael looked toward the porch. The mother dog remained exactly where she had been, lying comfortably beneath the fading sunlight. She didn't run, didn't bark, didn't rush forward, didn't celebrate. She simply lifted her head. Her amber eyes met his. A long moment passed between them. Then she lowered her head again, calm, certain, at peace. Michael stood very still. Someone unfamiliar with her story would have missed the significance entirely. To them it would have seemed like nothing. A dog lying on a porch, a quiet evening, an ordinary ending. But Michael knew better. For most of her life she had prepared herself for abandonment. Prepared for doors closing, prepared for trucks leaving, prepared for people disappearing. Every place had been temporary. Every attachment had been fragile. Every goodbye had arrived eventually. Yet today, the door had been open. The mountains had been open. The road had been open. And she had stayed. Not because she lacked the ability to leave, because she no longer felt the need to. The young shepherds eventually settled beside the porch. The evening sun slipped lower behind the mountains. Michael sat on the wooden steps. Nobody spoke. Nobody needed to. The mother dog opened one eye briefly, confirmed he was there, then closed it again. For a dog who had spent a lifetime expecting to be left behind, that small gesture contained more trust than any dramatic reunion ever could. And for Michael Turner, it was enough. Sometimes we think miracles of the moments that change everything overnight. But maybe the greater miracle is something quieter. Maybe it is a frightened heart choosing, little by little, to stop expecting abandonment. Throughout this story, the mother dog was never rescued by one dramatic act. Food helped, shelter helped, kindness helped. But what truly changed her was something many of us struggle to give and receive: patience. No one forced her to stay. No one demanded trust. She was simply given the freedom to choose. And over time, she discovered that not everyone leaves. People are often the same. We want healing to happen quickly. We want relationships repaired in a single conversation. Yet God often works through small, daily acts of faithfulness rather than sudden answers. A door left open. A return that happens again and again. A reason to believe one more time. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who may need a little hope today. Leave a comment and tell us about a person or animal who taught you the meaning of trust. And if you enjoy stories like this, please subscribe to the channel. May God bless you, watch over your home, strengthen your heart, and remind you that you are never forgotten, even in the longest winter.